Try anything. If there's any songs that people think they'd like to hear me play. Otherwise, I think I have a couple that I might just whip out and see what happens. Probably not that one, but so you can think about it and get back to me on that. Thanks. I don't know why that one popped out, but does anybody know what that is? Perfect. What's that? It's Pat Metheny. Yeah, it's a song that he wrote in honor of somebody he really admired. Sounds just like James Taylor, doesn't it? He wrote it for James Taylor. So it's called James. Yeah. And I guess while I'm doing Pat Metheny songs, I'll try one more. Oh, this one's this one's always under construction. Thanks. Those are the only 2 Pat Metheny songs I've done. Sure. I'm totally open to questions.
With a song like that, how would you recommend that somebody approach that? What methodology? I know it depends upon the level of expertise, but that to me seems like a very complex song. And how do you know from note to note where to go and how to do it?
Yeah. This is one of those, I've just always loved the song. It's called Last Train Home. And, it's one of those, when you hear it on his album, it's on an album of his called Off Ramp, it's just infectious. You kind of get you get the feeling of a train kind of rolling down the tracks. And so even as I got a book of his that had, a lot of his, actually just about all of his songs, but just done as lead sheets, which means it just had the chords and the melody, which is like a fake book would have. And so I thought, I got to see what's going on with Last Train Home and James. That's how I actually learned those. So I did not figure these out by ear. Well, I kind of did, but at least I had the guide to it. Right. Yeah.
Note for note. To me, that's such a huge undertaking.
Right. So this is one as this kind of thing. Just even keeping this going requires a touch kind of and technique that is really takes years, frankly. But I've always enjoyed and just trying to incorporate melodies, as I was even talking about last night, trying to play instrumental versions of songs, trying to incorporate melodies into the chords and everything, and trying to do what the whole band does. And of course, on his album, he's just playing the lead. Anyway, but he's got a drummer keeping the brushes going the whole way, and the bass parts, and then of course he has a lot of improvising in his playing too, where after he's gone through the main melody a few times, he now goes through it and just plays other stuff. In that one, I kind of have chosen not to try to do that. That's getting too far out right now, trying to keep everything going and then improvise a lead over it. So, but to sort of get to the question, this is one that as I was just started doing this and started messing around with the melody, looking for places I could play it and get the chords, because my first thought was, this is impossible. There's just, no way I could make this work. But as I kind of dug into it, it started becoming more and more possible, and then or just even a few measures of it did. And then it's like the fuse was lit, and I had to pursue it and see if I could actually do something with it.
So when you're playing that, are you hearing what you're hearing from Pat's recording as you're going through there, or are you just hearing what Neil is focusing on?
I'm probably done hearing Pat's recording. I like mine better now. Oh, no, wait. No, but it's really fun to play. Because I even try to fade it in and fade it out. That also presents a challenge for guitar playing. And what I chose to do in that one was once I'd worked on the melody, I just to stretch it out, played the melody an octave higher. So we're basically hearing the same melody, but in a different register, and then there's kind of a little bridge that happens at the end. And the challenge in that one is through all of that part, keeping the train on the tracks, So it ends up being, but yes, it's this is probably don't try this at home thing, not with this piece anyway.
Does the approach change if it's one that you're going to ultimately try to teach, make a lesson out of?
Many times that does evolve later. It's because James, the first one I played, is more likely to be something I could make a lesson on. This one I'm not even sure how I would teach it and make it. I'm kind of at a loss for that one. The other one's a little more cut and dried, but it's still percussive. You still have to be a drummer too to make it all work. Last night when I ran through a couple of versions of Romanza, showing it's okay, well here's what you'd get from a lesson on it, or at least like the sheet music from it, And with this one, it's the same type of thing. There has to be percussion in it, and it makes it, but it's a little more straightforward. It has really, some strange chords, chords where I'm making bars with middle fingers and things like that. So it has a lot of stuff in it that is, that puts them in the 9 and high 9 category as far as levels and things go. And I'm, yeah. Yeah. Some of you maybe heard me say this before, but I'm very, I will probably never give anything a 10 because it's like I don't want to, you know what, it would be this. If I ever learn that, I've been only working out about 19 years now. I've been struggling with Bethina, but it's getting there. I'm closing in on it. But the extreme things that are in the 9 range, I kind of figure, this is a 9.6 and a 9.7 and things like that. So I will qualify those because as soon as I put it into 9, there are what I would call easy 9s. These are the 9.8s. Here's a 9.1, maybe 8.9. So I have to tell you that I think that is just one of the greatest things ever written by anybody in the history of the universe. Well, I'm not sure what's happening, millions of light years away, but in our universe at least, that is just a piece. That was another piece I talked yesterday about songs that kind of changed. It really influenced me with Grandfather's Clock. That was another one because when that came out in 1968. remember hearing it and just thinking, this is like the coolest thing I've ever heard on the guitar, and doing the best I could to figure it out and just totally butchering it. And after about 5 or 10 years, finally got almost reasonable music to it, and I've changed it quite a bit, and I've fortunately got to know Mason Williams a little bit, and we've talked about the piece and a few other things, and he's been he was even kind of complimentary to the lesson I did on it, which is kind of cool. But yeah, it's just. Oh, the Mason Williams connection? Oh, well, it actually stemmed from me trying. Oh, let me think. Oh, I know what it was. I just sent him. I just wrote him a fan letter. I said, hey, I just want to compliment you on your piece. I said, it's really made my life a little bit easier when people ask me like what kind of stuff it is that I play, and I say, oh, I play like contemporary instrumental classical guitar or something. And they're like, what? And I say, well, have you heard classical gas? And they say, yeah. I says, that's kind of an example of that kind of stuff. It's like, I've never written anything that I would say is as good as classical gas, but at least it gives a reference point. And so that's what I sent him this letter saying, hey, you know what, I really want to thank, the fact that your piece kind of permeated the musical universe gives me a reference point to tell people I play instrumentals, kind of like that, or something. And I might have sent him some albums at the time. I probably did, because I was kind of explaining what it is I did. And he wrote back or emailed me back or called me or something afterwards and said, hey, thanks for your letter, and I'm enjoying listening to your albums. And I thought, well, that's pretty neat, And so he, about a year later, I asked him if he would think about coming down and doing a concert with me. At this time, I was doing concerts once a year at Montalvo, a venue near us, where, and this started with playing with John Renbourn there in 1999, I guess. And so once a year, I'd recruit different. Well, they kept asking me to find somebody famous that I could play with, and I said, I'll make this story short because it's like I didn't know anybody famous, but I had at least the opportunity to play there with Renbourn. And so at one point, I thought, oh, Mason Williams would be a great candidate for this because people would come out and see him, and so I asked him about. If he'd be interested in doing that, and he kind of begged off and said, I'm not in really good enough shape, and he's close to 80 years old or something, and he's 75 probably, but he's kind of in semi-retirement, and it would take a lot of practice to get in performance shape. So, but he did at that point say, hey, I play your albums all the time when I'm like off in my fishing trips and stuff like that. And I thought, wow, that's really neat. It's like, so getting the vote of confidence from a master that as far as I'm concerned, was pretty cool. And the last thing though that happened was I ran across a video of his. Oh, and at one point he sent me like all of his CDs and a box full of books and all this other stuff that it's like his whole thing. It's the guy was just really approachable and really friendly. I can't imagine there are many. Professional musicians that are that accommodating to their fans, sort of, But oh shoot, I'm not gonna be able to remember this song right now. But the story is, I found a video of him doing the Smothers Brothers theme. Can anybody whistle it? Can anybody remember how it goes? Oh God, I got the Andy and Mayberry thing. It's almost the same. That's the problem, right? Wrong one. That's not it. Anyway, that's how it goes. Okay. Not in C. Well, anyway. So I found this video of him playing it, and every time he would play it, he would just kind of strum the chords and whistle it. And I thought that'd actually make a pretty cool instrumental. And so I put together, and there's a lesson on it at TG on the Smothers Brothers theme. And so I thought I should send this off to him, and so I did. And after I'd done the lesson, I sent him a recording of it, and he got back to me and says, hey, he said, that was so cool, except you left something out, or that you didn't give credit to one of the writers on it, and I said, oh, thanks. And he says, but I always just whistled this thing. I wish I had thought about doing it the way you did. He says, you play it the way I wish I could, So Anyway, but that's kind of the end of the Mason Williams story. But he lives in Eugene, and I'd still like to meet him and shake his hand and stuff because he's pretty neat. So let's see. I don't know. Any other questions or things you want me? Yeah.
Dennis asked a question, so I guess if Dennis wanted to learn a piece like that, which piece should he start with?
Mm.
And I know sometimes you have to just put your left hand down and work with your right hand, and you get the thing with your thumb moving and other strings and moving up and down, back and forth. Just repetitive stuff, because you have to get that muscle memory going. Then you add this in, but there might be steps that you would take, and you were talking last night about the song that everybody does.
Yeah.
I noticed that some of that would probably apply, the Dust in the Wind being one,
Mm-hmm.
other songs like that. So if you want to, if you need an elephant, you have to say, this is a mighty big elephant. What should I cut off first to keep? So you really need to break it into steps. So that
Yeah.
and then practice little parts and gradually over time put it together and not expect it to be learning how to do it.
Yeah. And like the two that I mentioned last night, House of the Rising Sun and Stairway to Heaven, are both basically arpeggio songs, and that really gets your fingers kind of in shape to start working independently. And then even Grandfather's Clock is one that introduces the idea of keeping an alternating bass going, like Dust in the Wind and Landslide and Never Going Back and all of those kinds of things. But so those are all what I would say are sort of preliminary steps, and really Dust in the Wind is very easy if you're not obsessed with playing it at the speed that you hear it on the album. When you hear the song, it doesn't seem fast. Do do do. But the guitar is of course going. And so for a lot of people, even just moving your fingers that fast takes a long time. Some guitar players, Leo Kottke, for example, is one who, for him, I'm pretty sure that was always very easy. He could just move his fingers fast, and so he could play songs like at speed nobody can stand to listen to it at. And when John Fahey might play it, he might go very methodically, very heavy and very stiff, but that was kind of his style, and so that was easy for him. But to really improve as a guitar player, you have to work on things that are hard for you, and not just play stuff that is fun. We were talking about this earlier this morning with a couple people outside, of finding the balance between working hard, having fun playing, but also then working on stuff that challenges you. And when you come to the hard part in a song, don't just gloss over it and skip it and go to the next part. Or don't just play it once and say, "Oh, I'll get back to that." And it's like, no, go back to it right now and play it 25 times. Because what you really have to do to get through a song smoothly is the hard parts can't be hard parts anymore. You have to have done them enough times to make them easy parts, so that everything is the same level of difficulty. And that means playing the hard stuff way more times than the easy stuff. Otherwise, the easy stuff is you're gonna play the song too fast, because the easy stuff you want to get through, and then you get to the hard stuff and you trip all over it. So it's just tough, the whole balance of figuring out how to work on stuff and things. But I would say, if somebody wanted to get into instrumental finger picking, I keep planning on doing lessons on. I have a whole bunch of albums of this stuff, Beatles stuff and Christmas stuff, and I forget about this Beatles album that I did in like 40 years ago. Oh my God, no, 30 years ago. Good, but it's got fairly simple arrangements of Beatles tune. So songs like that are good ones to start with, but even something I did there, that little arpeggiated type roll is something that you could spend years working on that, so it doesn't sound like this. Now this is a normal finger picking version of it. I'm keeping a steady bass going, so that these would be like preliminary steps for getting into that style, and then we work on the nuances of making it more musical, you know. Yeah. 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 I have a student who is, what's he working on right now? He's working on Windy and Warm. And he'd never heard it till I played it for him like 2 weeks ago at his lesson. And I said, and he came back the next week with it pretty well under control. I mean, he's pretty accomplished from the sheet music that I have probably at the lesson at TG. And he was doing it pretty well too. And I said, well, did you listen to any versions of this? He says, no. I said, first thing is you really need to listen to songs that of other people playing the songs you're working on so that you know what to be listening for, or so that you know kind of what it's supposed to sound like. Don't just take my word for it that it's a cool song, And so and I even sometimes go back to listening to something I have maybe not listened to in 20 years. Every once in a while I'll put it on, I'll say, oh man, I forgot about that, or that's like evaporated from the way I play it, or something. So you'll keep finding new things, but yeah, really listening to other people play. Okay. I felt like for me, I was influenced by maybe a dozen different guitar players, probably more than that, some in very small doses. But I always wanted to make sure that I understood what they were doing and I could recreate it exactly the way I heard it, and not just rely. And I found all kinds of mistakes in John Renborn's music books and stuff. That's not what he did, because I'm listening to, and I'm thinking that's really hard, whatever they have in the music there. Then I listen back to what he's doing, and he's not doing that. It's like some editor put this together, and it's like, and I said that seems really impossible, and it could never sound like what I hear on the record. And I'd go back and listen to the record again and find that weird. So anyway, so yeah, if you want to get into fingerpicking stuff, it's like start with the arpeggio ones, then look at Grandfather's Clock or House of the Rising. I mean, or some of the Beatles ones, or Dust in the Wind. So, Don?
When you're learning a song, regardless of your level, do you emphasize trying to get it to memory as soon as possible, or playing the music from the music for a long time until you have it down pat, then trying to
I found that the more difficult a song is, the more you have to memorize it, because you can't be looking at the music and looking at your fingers and figure out what's going on. And sometimes songs that are more difficult to memorize are ones that are fairly easy to play, because you'll look at the music and you're not like really processing it. So I think learning to play a song by memory is a really good idea. But it's also then really important to go back and look at the music again periodically. This has happened to me numerous times, where I'll play a song for years, and then I'll stumble upon it in a book, and I'll start playing through it, and I says, oh, that's not how it went the first time I learned it. Huh. New book, must be wrong, but it was, and so things just kind of that they can take on a life of their own. But I think especially with instrumental pieces and stuff, it's important to do that. With if you're sitting down and playing songs with friends, it's pretty easy to look at the chords and just have them in front of you and go through a lot of stuff. That's what Vanessa will be doing in her class a lot of times, is playing, running through multiple songs that we don't expect everybody to necessarily memorize right away. I think, is that right? Yeah. You want them to be able to play something, looking at it, and then go on to the next one in 10 minutes or something. Yeah. So, I probably didn't mean to ramble on this much. This is supposed to be like introducing the teachers and letting them do stuff. Now that many of them are here, we can probably get on with the rest of the program. And so each teacher is going to kind of come up and talk a little bit, and they're probably going to be open to questions and stuff too. I think we'll probably go with Doug next, and then we'll start introducing the singers.